And welcome to video 6 using ChatGPT to do EV-cult analysis. So now that we have that data that we extracted from a text using Python, this next video teaches how to enter that EV-cult data into an EV-cult enabled ChatGPT-4, because you'll remember we inserted some custom instructions a few lessons ago into ChatGPT-4, so it now knows the meta science of evolutionary culturology. Secondly, prompting or asking the EV-cult enabled ChatGPT-4 to analyze that data. And then we'll be prompting a ChatGPT, probably the EV-cult tutor GPT, to present that analysis in essay form, and then we'll ask it to extend the essay as well. So that's what we're going to cover next. So as we know, EV-cult applies to everything, as it's a meta science, reduces both systems and units of culture to fractal holon partons. And EV-cult turns even the arts and humanities into a science, because we can now obtain the scientific units of culture and, say, extract them from a novel such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or what have you. Because all domains in culture, and there's over 50,000 of them, are structured and function as fractal holon partons. So this is how we use an EV-cult enabled ChatGPT-4 to do an EV-cult analysis. So you'll remember before we had our data there, the number of chapters, sentences, words, etc. We copied that from the Python script that was outputted. And we're now going to enter that resulting EV-cult data into an EV-cult enabled ChatGPT-4. So, as you'll recall, this is EV-cult enabled because we inserted those two custom instructions. So what we'll do is we'll type here down the bottom, here is a count of the fractal holon partons, or the units of culture basically, in the novel Frankenstein. And now we'll copy paste, or rather just paste, the number of chapters, and we're going to add at the front books 1, because obviously there's one book makes up the novel Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So, and we'll now say plot that as a logarithmic chart, so we can see some of the patterns in the data, and also show the line of best fit in that chart, and calculate the angle of that line. So this is some interesting EV-cult analysis. Send that message, and ChatGPT is analyzing that, thinking about it now. So that'll take a little while for the second hand to circle around there as it's analyzing. So it's now going through, looking at that data. Books 1, chapters 47, paragraphs 804, sentences 3,349, words and characters is interesting, 426, 426. That's an interesting number of characters. So in a moment we'll see that plotted as a logarithmic chart. Here we go, ready now. Here's the log chart, very good. And we can see the red line of best fit there. So that's a logarithmic chart of the units on the different scale levels: books, chapters, paragraphs, sentences, words and characters, or glyphs, letters. So we might want to save that image just in case we want to publish this as a scientific paper, an interesting study of the units of culture in the novel Frankenstein. And now we'll enter that data into the EvCult Tutor GPT. So go to the EvCult website. Here's the EvCult Tutor GPT, which is a slightly more souped up version of an EvCult enabled ChatGPT. And we're saying, again, here is a count of the fractal holon partons, or the units of culture on their different scale levels in the novel Frankenstein. So we enter that, and we just paste that again, and we better add at the front books 1, because the novel is one book, one unit of culture, one fractal holon parton. And this time we'll ask it, or we'll ask this particular GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer, Model 4, what does EvCult say about this result? So the EvCult Tutor GPT is having a little think about that. Here we go. The count of the fractal holon partons in the novel Frankenstein reflects a hierarchical multi-level structure that is central to the concept of fractal holon partons in EvCult. And now it goes through and presents a more detailed analysis of those different units on those different scale levels. It's going a bit fast, so I probably won't read through that. I won't read that aloud. There we go, characters 426, 426, 426,426 units. Those are the individual letters and symbols. And according to EvCult, there are the 3 laws: integrate upwards into a larger unit on the scale level above, compete and cooperate sideways with units of the same scale level, and control and command downwards or inwards the smaller units which are inside them. So there's a little summary of that interesting result. And now that we have those results, we can ask the EvCult Tutor GPT to please write an essay on these results. So let's create that prompt, or let's engineer or craft that question or query. Bit of prompt engineering happening here. Write an EvCult essay on this result, include a table. So the EvCult tutor's having a think about that. Here it comes. Title: A Fractal Holon Parton Analysis of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. There's your introduction section of the essay. Here's an analysis of some of the fractal holon partons in that novel. And there are many dimensions that we could analyse, not just the units that make it up, such as books, chapters, paragraphs, sentence, words and characters, but this is one aspect of an analysis that we can do in EvCult. And so there we have the details of the analysis, or the explanation of those units on the different scale levels of the fractal holon parton. And here's the EvCult perspective, and again we return to the 3 laws: integrate upwards, each of those levels integrates upwards into a larger unit on the scale level above. Law 2, cooperate and compete sideways with units on the same scale level, and command and control downwards. And now we'll ask it to expand that essay a little bit, please. That was pretty short. If we want to turn it into a scientific paper to publish in a journal, perhaps, we might want to expand that a bit. So that's a fairly simple prompt. Expand the essay. And we'd like to analyse some other aspects of the novel Frankenstein, including plot, theme and characters. So we'll expand that out. This is the way we ask for that. Expand the essay to include EV-cult analyses of 1. Plot, 2. Themes, 3. Characters. Include tables that demonstrate, illustrate or show how the 3 laws of EV-cult apply in each case. Let's ask that question. There we go. Send message. So the EV-cult tutor's having a think about that. Composing that essay, expanded essay. Here we go. Title, an EV-cult analysis of Frankenstein. Title hasn't changed, but here's the expanded analysis. And as it's pointing out, in addition to those structural elements of chapters, paragraphs, sentences, words, characters, we can analyse other units of culture in the novel, or other elements, which are plot, themes, characters. And of course, it's an ambiguous term, characters. It's a tool or a word that can be used in many different ways. Characters can mean glyphs, as in alphabetical letters or characters, but it can also mean characters in the sense of dramatic characters in a novel, such as Victor Frankenstein, a fictional human character, and the monster, which is a zombie character. So there we go. There's some tables of plot, theme, and character. And there's our 3 laws and how they operate on those units of culture, on the plot as a unit of culture, the themes of the novel as units of culture, and the fictional characters, such as Victor Frankenstein, the protagonist, and the monster, Elizabeth, the love interest. And there's the EV-cult perspective on those characters with the 3 laws again. Integrate upwards, compete and cooperate sideways, command and control downwards. So we could perhaps compile all those segments of the paper and put it together as a co-authored paper and submit it to a scientific journal as an EV-cult study of the unit of culture known as Frankenstein's Mary Shelley. So that's how we do that. That's how we use an EV-cult enabled ChatGPT-4 to do an EV-cult analysis, and then we put it into the EV-cult tutor GPT for a bit of extra EV-cult detail. So that's how we do it. And so a quick lesson recap. We inserted the EV-cult data that we obtained previously using that Python script to analyse the units on the different scale levels, or count the units on the different scale levels in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein as one example. Then we added 1 unit into that data set. You'll remember we also typed books 1 at the start of that little data entry there, so in front of the number of chapters. And then we prompted the EV-cult tutor GPT to analyse that data and write an essay and then expand the essay. And we got it to create some log charts of the count of the units, namely 1 book, 47 chapters, etc. But when you plot them logarithmically, then you can get the angle of the line of best fit. All very interesting. So there's some of those log charts of those text hierarchy levels and line of best fit. And then you calculate the angle, 47 degrees in that case. And you can also use Google Ngrams to do different types of EV-cult analysis. All you've got to do is enter 2 or more terms in there to compare and contrast and see if they're competing or cooperating. There's the URL down the bottom, books.google.com/ngrams. And here's an example I prepared earlier on that weblog down the bottom, the EvCult Storyality blog. There's a short blog post looking at this case study of a three-way battle, a competition between three different spellings of the word encyclopedia over time, whether it has an ASH or an AE character glyph in the middle of pedia, or separate letters, AE, encyclopedia, or removing the A, encyclopedia, spelt more phonetically. And as Charles Darwin and Max Muller pointed out, over time words get honed down through use and blind variation and selective retention. We keep the tools that are easier, simpler and more efficient, and the shorter words, etc. So an interesting EvCult case study there, using a Google Ngram to do some EvCult research. And a subdomain of EvCult in that case would be the digital humanities. And of course all sciences and disciplines fall under EvCult because it has a meta-scientific application applying to all domains and all disciplines in culture as a meta science. And again, there's just that diagram showing the units on the different scale levels of novels, and the link down the bottom to see more diagrams applied to many different domains in culture. As I say, there's 50,000 plus domains, not even including physics, chemistry, biology, etc. But those domains, of course, also fall under the purview of EvCult as a meta science. And again, that EvCult diagram there, same thing, the levels and units of a novel, examined as their scientific structure, fractal, whole, and partons, with the three laws operating on all those units and all those scale levels. So as we know, EvCult applies to everything as a meta science, including the individual sciences down the bottom and the meta sciences in the middle, because it reduces all systems and units of culture to their simpler scientific structure, the fractal, whole, and parton. So in a nutshell, what is EvCult? It's a meta science that provides a single standard, universal, one-size-fits-all set of scientific units, scale levels, evolutionary mechanisms, and three laws that apply to all domains: nature, biology, culture, everything. So, to sum up, this lecture has taught, first of all, we entered some EvCult data, account of the units of culture in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, into an EvCult enabled ChatGPT. It was EvCult enabled because we included 2 custom instructions into ChatGPT-4 in an earlier lesson. We then prompted the EvCult enabled ChatGPT to analyze that. It printed a log chart of the units, calculated the angle of the line of best fit. And then we prompted the EvCult Tutor GPT to present that data as an essay and expanded that essay further. So you could end up with a scientific paper to send off to a scientific journal. And as a side note, or a by the way, that data set from Kaggle that we looked at before of the ASCII, classic ASCII text, it has hundreds of texts in there. So we've just used one example, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but there's nothing stopping you going through and analysing any of them that you like using the same method. And coming up next, our next lesson preview here, we'll be showing how EvCult solves the problem of consilience, the unity of knowledge. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again. Bye for now.